starting it off, Josh took a little bit of damage just so we could play his turn 1 Noble. Matt doing what he wants to do, which is drop some Birds of Paradise because, yep, 5 color. He needs to all the mana fix he can. The nice part for Matt is with Infect, he shouldn't have really any way to deal with his creatures. It's going to be a race. Like, did I kill you with Infect before you got to land a Niv-Mizzet and kill me?
The cool thing now is with Infect, you have Waterlogged Grove, which is basically the blue-green horizon land from Modern Horizons, and it's kind of a cool thing because it helps you fuel become immense if you have that, and it also you just draw an extra card, which is always nice.
It is nice to have a cycle land, and like having it in blue-green as opposed to the white-green from before, I think is a little more helpful with like your Blighted Agents and the Teferi. But I think even beforehand with the Horizon Canopy, I feel like it just got better. I don't know why, but that color shift just made it better.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Like, it's definitely it kind of helps give you a little more consistency. The card draw is always great. Ooh, Supreme Verdict.
Well, yeah, because on Matt's side, since we do have 5 colors, he's also playing the Bring to Light package, so he has a lot of one-ofs. And Josh here just double-checking, like, is there anything I can do? Unfortunately, the answer is no, unless he had an Indestructible spell, which, if they're playing that, there's some new tools added that I didn't know about.
And, Matthew's deck's super toolboxy. Like you said, it's pretty sweet. Red and 6, which is real good here. Especially against Infect with Blighted Agent, Glistener Elf. Noble Hierarch takes huge hits from that card.
It is definitely very awkward, though, because, like, Matt there had to give up his Birds of Paradise. Whether that'll affect him or not, we'll find out, because he did have a fetch land, so he could possibly just go get, like, some of the last colors he needs, but now he's off of, like, the double white. He will need red and blue here in order to do things, and that's pretty mana intensive, so losing those birds was a little unfortunate. But against Infect, that could have possibly untapped killed him. You got to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I really like Matthew's list. The only thing is, that's the only Supreme Verdict in the main deck, so he's kind of in a position now where he probably needs to have multiple removal spells, especially now that there's a Giver of Runes on board and a Glistener Elf.
Yeah, no, Giver of Runes is definitely a real good addition to that deck. It will definitely make things hard for Matt if he can't start finding answers, but if you get a Ren and 6 plus something else, that can be a duo package, because either Josh has to leave the Ren and 6 alone or has to commit to killing that, which then just buys Matt more time.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very curious. Like, there's just a lot of back and forth right now. Matthew just played in Arkham's the Astrolabe?
Yep, Arkham's Astrolabe, real good. It is the 1-drop artifact that when it enters, it draws a card, and then it can cycle mana for you. So it's another like form of Birds of Paradise where it'll make the mana he needs. It cycles it. It doesn't make mana like birds. And then here with Night, because Night is either gain life, put counters on, or blow up an enchantment. Matt's just going to go with the counters and make his creature bigger to kind of raise him, since his life total is irrelevant against Infect. Whereas Giver Runes here, at least if he was able to draw a removal spell, since Giver can't target itself, he can kill the Giver, then go for the Glistener Elf, but if he only has 1 removal spell, he doesn't really have that choice. And Josh is going to give it pro one of the 2 colors, whether it's green or white, and kill Matt.
Yep, that should be a game. That's the cool thing about Infect. It'll come out of nowhere, right?
Yep.
You're only counting to 10. 1 second there might be really nothing going on in the game, and the next second you just quick wins.
Yep, you saw it was like Matt wanted. Like, Josh was setting up real good. Yeah, like he had the Noble with the Giver and the Glistener Elf, so he was having the free pump off the Noble with the free mana, the protection from Giver. So that Supreme Verdict was definitely necessary there. But Josh being able to just land another Giver and a Glistener Elf, that was just... I don't think there was anything Matt could have had there, which is why Josh led with the pump spells first, because if Matt had anything, it would have been either a Lightning Bolt or like a Fatal Push off of 1 mana, which I don't even think he has 1-drop removal spells in his deck. Not in the main board.
Does not. Just looking at the two Decklist players are sideboarding. What do you think looks real well here, especially for Matthew to help kind of?
Well, for Matt, we have another Supreme Verdict, which will be really helpful. Colligan's Command, being able to make him discard a card and deal with the creature, will be super useful, especially for 3 mana. Like, killing off an Infect creature and possibly getting rid of a pump or a protection spell can be extremely helpful. He has a lot of one-offs, so there's a lot of things to go through. There's a whole bunch of cards that don't do too much. Like, there's another Knight of Autumn, which only gains life. Not that great. Force of Negation, he could probably bring in and definitely be helpful there because he can tap out to keep doing his plans while countering, like, Become Immense, which is what Josh just won with there. Kaya Orzhov Usurper is also really good because I think she kills almost every single card in Josh's deck. Glistener Elf, Nobles, Giver, she kills 12 out of the 16 creatures in Josh's deck and exiles it, so it can't feed Become Immense. If somehow Josh has a way to get creatures back, they're gone. So Matt definitely has a lot of good choices here, and he has a lot of random one-ofs that I think could go away. Like, he has a Huntsmaster of the Fells in the main. That's not going to really do much. Like, on 4, I think you need to be killing his creatures, not just putting out some blockers to probably buy you a turn. The Knight of Autumn in the main can come out. Unmoored Ego could stay if Matt feels it's necessary, because 3 mana take away, like, all your Vines of Vastwoods or all your mutagenic growths or even all your creatures can definitely be helpful.
Yeah, and looking at Josh's list here, in his sideboard he has 2 Geist of St. Traft, 2 Rest in Peace, 3 Path to Exile, looks like?
Yep, it looks like a 3.
2 Collector Oofy, 2 Force of Vigor, and 3 Veil of Summer. I don't know, like, preemptively, do you think he boards in the Veil of Summers? Assuming that there might be some sort of counter
I think
magic.
he does. Like, it also, not only counter magic, but it'll give your creatures protection from black and blue.
Yep.
So, if you're expecting Assassin's Trophy, Colligan's Command, like, he just saw, like, Matt's playing a 5-color deck, so he's probably going to have tons of multicolor removal spells, which most of them will have either black or blue in it. So, Veil of Summer is just a 1-mana Vines of Vastwood, and it replaces itself for him. And then the Geist of St. Traps is just, oh, you killed my board? Well, I can actually kill you with regular damage too, because I have a Geist of St. Trap. So I think both of those cards are real good for Josh here. I think it comes down to, like, how he wants to play. Like, does he want to stay aggressive and maybe he'll bring in just the Veils, or does he want to try to play a longer game and bring in the Geist of St. Traps along with the Veil of Summers? And I think that just comes down to how he feels.
Yeah, I think if it's me playing in this matchup, I probably want to try and be as aggressive as possible.
Yep.
I just want to get on there, whether it's with Glistener Elf, Blighted Agent, and just try to get that 10 infect damage as fast as possible.
Yep, it's definitely, like, with Matthew, like, you saw he's playing 5-color, he had the Supreme. You can't imagine that he has too many, like, expensive board wipes like that, because that's just so taxing on your mana, that you could either just bring in the Veils or something else and just stay quick and just try to race Matt before he can do that again, because, as you can see, it just worked for Josh, and that's just... the deck was just doing what it wants to do. So I think staying at that and, like, bringing the Veils just makes it so it stays that way.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I really like about Josh's list, in the main he's playing 2 Spell Pierce.
Yep.
Which is super solid, can really help, I think, especially in a matchup like this where there's, tons of smaller removal spells. You have Trophy, especially against Ren and 6.
Yep.
Real solid, like, counter that. You're probably in the clear for the most part.
Especially because Matt's probably going to jam that as soon as he can. Like, if Josh only has 1 creature on turn 1 and Matt gets to just jam a Ren and 6, he will. So I could see Josh, like, not playing a creature on turn 1 and waiting for turn 2 to keep it protected. Unless it's like a Giver of Runes or a Noble Hierarch. Like, those creatures, like, it feels bad to kill when you're playing against Infect, when you just want to kill the Infectors, especially in, like, a deck like Matt's where he has not a lot of spot removal, like a handful. If you're playing something like Control, you'll have tons of 1-mana removal spells, 2-mana removal spells, counter spells, and board wipes, so it's a little different.
So both players took a mulligan, looks like.
Which, with the new mulligan rule, definitely helps out Infect, because Josh gets to look at 7 and put 1 back. You can, like... just having that 1 extra card can really make or break your hand sometimes. Oh, they're both going to take a mulligan. This is where the new mulligan rule, I think, really, like, shines. Like, you're going to 5. That's already feel bad. But at least, like, getting to see 7 cards and sculpt, like, a 5 hand so you at least have a chance at the game Because normally in these situations, I feel only one person's going to 5. It just happens to be both of them are going to 5, so it feels like a fair game. But I actually think Josh is favored now because he could just have, like, 2 infectors, and Matt, like, is forced to keep, like, probably a questionable hand with, like, 1 or 2 lands and, like, multiple removal spells, because Josh is, like, having a quick hand like this can be real easy on 5 cards.
Yeah, and I really like it. Again, from the inside, the Infect perspective, it's just like you said, you can afford to go down. You can afford to be a little more risky per se.
Yep.
In terms of the mulligan, and it really is beneficial, especially in a matchup like here where if Matthew doesn't get the correct colored lands, based on what's in his deck and his hand, it can be very bad very fast.
It can be real detrimental. Like, I think what Matt might be looking for is, like, similar to game 1, like, they both kind of played their hand out. He Supreme Verdict, and he definitely had a chance to come back, but Josh just had what he needed. In this scenario, like, they'd both dump their hand by turn 2, Supreme Verdict. They'd both be playing off the top of the library. Matt, I think, would be favored in that scenario, but it's still going to be an interesting ride, to say the least.
And Matt has fetch shocked for a Temple Garden.
So most likely on turn 1 with a green and a white like that, he's either going to be playing Arcum's Astrolabe or Birds of Paradise. There's nothing else he can do for this mana in his deck, which got nice little birds. That's good for Matt. Like, it'll mana ramp him into what he wants, whereas Josh is only going to be playing, like, 1 creature here. Next turn, Matt can, like, play a pretty decent threat on 3. Or even, actually, if he has a Wrenn and 6, he could play a Wrenn and 6 and get his fetch back, or kill the Noble Hierarch. So Matt's in a pretty decent position from, like, going to 5 and, like, what he could potentially have.
Yep, and Josh also shocks and plays a Noble. So like you said, Wrenn and 6 is probably very huge here if he has it.
Yeah, Wrenn and 6 would definitely be nice, because you could kill off the Noble Hierarch, and, like, you just got around any counter spells that Josh could have. Since Force of Negation is only instant or sorcery, so that means Josh couldn't have that. Prismatic Vista coming into play. Definitely been an all-star in multiple formats. Being able to, especially in a deck like this where you're playing 5 colors and you're going to want to be playing tons of basics, that way you can't get blown out by, like, what's it called? Blood Moon or any other effects like that that would turn off all of his lands in a 5-color deck like this.
Yeah, so Josh just deployed a Teferi Time Raveler. Second land for the turn is Ink Moth, which is probably pretty big here.
Yeah, having those man lands, like, being able to play a land and a creature at the same time, like, sure, you're going to commit 1 mana to make it a creature later on, but being able to play a Teferi there, next turn, Josh could just play a land, activate Ink Moth, possibly even kill Matt. And that Prismatic Vista going to work right here, going to get him one of probably all 5 of his colors. I'd imagine he's playing at least 1 of each basic, which he is. So that's where Prismatic Vista comes nice. Like, you're paying 1 life. You don't have to shock. So in scenarios against, like, Burn, you're not taking extra damage for no reason. You can go get any one of your colors. And also, it's going to go get him a snow basic, which is what he needs for Arcum's Astrolabe, since that cost 1 snow.
So let's see. We see Lightning Helix from Matt on the Teferi. So that's pretty big. Like, getting the Teferi off board, definitely super beneficial. Matt deploys another Birds and then a tapped, looks like
Overgrown Tomb. Which, the interesting part, on Josh's turn, he minus Teferi and opted not to bounce the Birds of Paradise, which I think is fair because with Teferi, since it is targeting the birds, Matt could have decided to kill his own Birds of Paradise, so Josh wouldn't draw a card. So he decided not to bounce anything. That way he was guaranteed getting that 1 card.
So on Josh's side, we have a Swinging Ink Moth Nexus with a Noble Hierarch trigger.
So we got a nice little 2/2 Infector in the air. Matt has no mana, so he has to take the damage. This is where Josh has to decide, do I want to commit here or just start chipping away? So he decides to chip away because he doesn't have much going on in hand right now. He's going to have another Infector.
And I think that's, like, the biggest misconception when you're playing Infect. Players think it's like, oh, all or nothing. Like, you can afford to chip away every so often, and it definitely makes a very big difference in the gameplay.
Especially when you have, like, man lands that can't be killed pretty much at instant speed. you can just chip away, start doing it here and there, because then when they finally commit to like board wiping you, you can just untap kill them with your Ink Moth Nexus right then and there. Now it looks like we're just kind of going over life totals, because I'm sure someone probably said a different number than the other, so they're just going over it. Because I believe Matt should be at his correct load total. Josh might have missed the Lightning Helix trigger. Or not trigger, but gaining of the life from the spell.
Yep.
So here Matt definitely needs to kind of do something, because having the Ink Moths and like just 2 Birds of Paradise, you'd have to just kind of throw them under the bus and kill them is not a great thing.
So Matt's a shock in a breeding pool.
I think we might finally see Niv-Mizzet here, but we'll see what happens.
He has enough lands. He has access to all the colors because of double birds on the battlefield.
Oh, Bring to Light. So most likely Matt here is probably going to get a Supreme Verdict, but Supreme Verdict's not great here. Or, yeah, he could just go get Niv-Mizzet. I forgot, Bring to Light does say creature. Bring to Light says a lot of things. Bring to Light is probably one of my personal favorite Magic cards, just because I used to play 5-color Valakut.
Oh, okay.
And it's just so much fun, because you get access to counter spells, Search for Escanta, anything and everything in Valakut, as opposed to just green and red. And then you get Bring to Light, which goes and finds whatever answer you want. Matt here showing all of his answers from Niv-Mizzet, which we'll see how this plays out for Matt. You see Bring to Light here. It can get a lot of things. It can get you instant, sorcery, creature, equal to the amount of colors paid into it. So with him paying 5 mana, he can go get a 5-drop, so he went and got Niv-Mizzet. If he paid 4 colors, could have got Supreme Verdict, could have went and got a Wrenn and 6, but a lot of those don't do much, whereas here, Matt has a lot of choices, because Niv-Mizzet goes and gets him 10 cards to kind of play around with.
Right, and right now we have, there's a Supreme Verdict, a Kaya, a Domri, the Anarchabolas.
Yeah, that one is an interesting choice.
That one's pretty cool.
That's one that fights, I believe. So that's probably why Matt brought it in, because it allows him to not only create more mana between the plus ability, but he can minus to have creatures fight each other. And then the Izzet Charm there is extremely helpful in this game. Every mode in Izzet Charm is relevant. Deal 2 damage to a creature, counter target non-creature spell unless they pay 2, and draw 2, discard 2. So in many situations, that one's really helpful.
The thing I like, especially about the Domri, is that it gives your creatures +1/+0.
Yep.
So, pretty cool thing, it turns your birds into 1/1s.
Yep, your birds can finally start attacking, or they can block your Ink Moths, because just throwing them away to block is so feel bad. But if you can trade a Blink Moth for an Ink Moth, or a Birds of Paradise for a Ink Moth, that's a feel-good moment.
It's definitely sweet. I know in the past, I've dabbled in a lot of zoo, and killing people with Birds of Paradise is always
off
a fun
Noble Hierarch triggers.
It's always
definitely
a
good
fun
feeling. Or even just killing them with the Noble themselves, like, oh, you have an Ensnaring Bridge? Man. Yep. Oh, I have a 0/1? Okay, I'll kill you.
I think the other thing, too, now is that, Niv-Mizzet is not a small creature.
No, it is not.
Matthew definitely has a much faster clock, per se, in terms of regular damage. So it's just a matter of who decides to take the first step, basically.
I think the big concern for Josh here is Matt just got 4 really good cards, so he can easily deal with the Noble, 1 Ink Moth, and the Glistener Elf pretty easily when he untaps. So I think here he has to decide, like, do I just go all out for it? By him tapping an Ink Moth, I don't think he can. If he had attacked with both, and Josh either lets the birds or either kills the birds and puts a counter on Niv, or Matt doesn't block with the bird, and Josh could get in for some Infect damage, but I think his hand just wasn't enough to get to that damage.
Yeah, and the other thing too is with Josh's list, because he's splashing white, he doesn't have cards like Distortion Strike. He doesn't have Twisted Image or things of that nature, which could help to, make your Glistener Elf unblockable, or your Ink Moths. Twisted Image, let's say, to clear away a Birds of Paradise, things like that.
He doesn't have those oldies but goodies in Infect. And the other thing, I don't believe I saw an oldie but a goodie for Infect, Apostle's Blessing. So here he could have been like, name pro-green, and then he could attack in since birds were green and Niv-Mizzet's green. So I think Josh here was just trying to see if Matt would block or not. Because if Matt didn't block, Josh could have got in for like probably 4 Infect off the mutagenic growth in his hand. But he's just going to put a couple counters on Niv-Mizzet, see where it goes from there. Because now at this point, with Niv-Mizzet being a 3/3, I believe, Blink Moth with the trigger from Noble and a pump spell will just kill it. So, nope, Niv-Mizzet's a 6/6. That seems unnecessary. I know it's all 5 colors, and it's hard to get out, but 6/6 is pretty big. And you can see, like, Matt just gets to choose a whole bunch of... It's a very weird card, how it works, because you choose colored paired cards from the ones revealed. So you have to take, like, multicolor spells, which is why Matt plays so many, obviously, in a 5-color deck.
Ooh.
But it's still just a weird one. Oh.
Matt opts to do the Domri, play the Domri and fight, have birds fight the
Noble Hierarch.
Which is pretty big here, just because, like we said earlier, the Domri gives creatures you control +1/+0.
Yep.
So Josh is going to deploy Mutagenic Growth and protect the Noble. And we have Is It Charm.
And Matt is going pretty in deep on this one. Josh
with a Veil Summer.
He really wanted that Noble Hierarch dead.
I think the thing is with the Noble, like, if I'm Matt and I'm playing in this position and I know I just got, 5 cards, 4 or 5 cards, I want to probably try and whittle Josh's hand down more so than myself per se, especially at a board where I have Niv-Mizzet still. I still have birds. I have a Planeswalker that helps pump my guys.
Oh, definitely.
So
I think the big thing also was, like, Matt drawing that Ghost Quarter for a turn was, like, pretty insane, because now if Josh ever commits to one of the Ink Moths, they just die, especially since he just used some of his cards there with the Veil of Summer and the Mutagenic Growth. Sure, the Mutagenic Growth isn't going to do anything against Ghost Quarter, and neither is the Veil, but it's still, like, it makes it so Matt now just has that one removal spell that's needed. Like, you saw Matt commit pretty hard to the Noble, which I don't think was too much of a commitment there. Like, minusing on Domri, like, Josh isn't probably attacking Domri. Right. Domri's not really doing anything for him now.
Well, the other thing is Matt's still sitting on Kaya plus Verdict.
Yep.
So
which he definitely wants to try to keep away from that Verdict as much as possible. I think there, if he had played the Kaya instead, it could have been a little different. Like, could just kill, like, exile the Noble, and then he has to commit. Whereas the Mutagenic Growth, like, going the Domri route, Josh has so many more answers, which I guess is, like, what Matt wanted. He wanted less pump spells in Josh's hand, especially in a situation like this where Blighted Agent, who's unblockable, is on the field. And he's a 2-drop, so now Kaya can't deal with that. So Matt either needs to draw an answer or contemplate using Supreme Verdict, but even Supreme Verdict isn't that great because there's still 2 Ink Moths.
The other thing is, if Josh could find a way to get... probably Become Immense. If he could draw Become Immense here, depending on what Matthew drew, this game is probably over. Unless Matthew decides to Kaya, get rid of Noble.
Which, if he doesn't Supreme, I could see him doing that, since... What else is he kind of doing this turn? If you're not going to Supreme Verdict and he knows about the Kaya, might as well at least play it and try to get rid of the Noble Hierarch. And then next turn, he has the Domri fight. He might opt to Supreme Verdict here, but I don't think that's that great. Because if he's worried about an attacker, if he Supreme Verdicts, you still have the Ink Moths. If you just simply... Oh. Well, he's making 4 mana, so he, I think, is going to go with the Supreme.
There it is, Supreme Verdict.
And he doesn't even want to attack Josh.
Does not. I think part of the thing is that if Josh is sitting on a Veil of Summer, right, can't really do all that much there. Verdict can't be countered.
Yeah, but like at least there, like getting in for like that 4 points of damage, that could be relevant. And like if he's worried about Josh playing activating Ink Moth and blocking, that's just really good for Matt, because if he pumps him, 1, that's a pump spell gone, and 2, that's a dead Ink Moth. Whereas now, you know, Matt has to put a little bit more work at killing him, and he has to race against 2 Ink Moths, which He'll sit on that Ghost Quarter and wait. I think here Matt is probably going to contemplate, do I Ghost Quarter one? But I don't think you can, because I think you have to wait and see if Josh ever goes on the aggressive side and pumps one. But Josh has been playing a long time. He's a good player. He's not going to just throw pump spells into a creature for a Ghost Quarter unless he draws, like, Vines of Vastwood or something that would give it protection.
Makes sense. And that's the thing. All those cards, we haven't seen it. We haven't seen any Vines.
Yeah, Josh been drawing a lot of lands.
Yeah, we haven't seen... he's got 2 Blossoming Defense. We haven't seen any of those yet. So there's definitely a lot of really solid juice still left.
Yeah, I think if Matt taps out for anything and Josh draws that, we could see him definitely just try to end the game by pumping one of the Ink Moths, making Matt use the Ghost Quarter, and then he just decides to kill it.
All right, so Matthew decides to deploy the Kaya.
Which Kaya's still a little helpful here because he's going to eat 2 cards, probably like the Blighted Agent and the Veil, which he went for. But then it makes it a little harder because as more time goes on, he'll be exiling cards, which means Become Immense gets harder and harder to use, which will definitely be helpful for Matt because if it ever gets to the point where he has like Protection Spell plus Become Immense, that's usually how this game ends. But if Josh can't do both of those, well, then it's good for Matt.
I think it's cool, like, from Josh's perspective, right? Typically, the Infect games go much quicker. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Like you said, we have the double Ink Moth. Matthew's deck, I don't know. It's like, there's a lot of solid cards.
Mm-hmm.
But in a sense, it definitely feels like it could just kind of peter out, per se, and, like, kind of fall off at a certain point.
Yep.
Where the Infect deck is still going to draw, for the most part, will probably draw more juice.
Especially because, like, when you have man lands, it just makes your deck so much better. Because you can just, like, right now, Josh is only drawing lands. Like, he has the Veil of Summer in hand, sure, but he's just been doing nothing. Matt's already at 6 Infect. At any point, this game could just, like, end. Except when you draw Niv-Mizzet. That is super helpful for Matt. That is really what he needed, because now he's going to get a bunch of cards. Sure, he's not going to have the mana for it, but he's going to have a blocker plus a Ghost Quarter on the Ink Moths, which will be very helpful for him. And he has not many cards. Oh, no, he does have.
Yep, a Renin 6 in there. Oh,
wow, those all look like lands to me, so apparently my LASIK is not great, because I thought Matt was going to get like 2 or 3 cards there. No, he got 5, which is pretty insane. Especially, like, if Josh can't untap and kill Matt, between all the cards he just found, like, you have an Assassin's Trophy to kill off an Ink Moth. You have so many answers right there. Teferi, that way, Josh can't do things at instant speed. He has to play Fair Magic, which, it's modern. Nobody really wants to play Fair Magic.
Well, the other thing, too, is what Matthew can do is, right, he can, if he gets to his turn, he can play the Renin 6, deploy the Ghost Quarter.
Yep.
Get back the Ghost Quarter.
Do it again.
Try and hit the other Ink Moth.
Like, he has so many options. He's like, he could be, do I want to use all my mana? Okay, Teferi, Renin 6, do all these things. Do I want to do this other? Like, especially if, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay, no, I thought Matt had enough mana. He's 1 mana short of being able to Teferi, Renin 6, Ghost Quarter, get back Ghost Quarter, play Ghost Quarter, and have Assassin's Trophy. That would just be unfair, I feel. Like, you're trying so hard to kill someone, and they're just like, here's 3 cards with all the mana to completely ruin your day. But that Triad Arbor was not a good draw for Josh. I think at this point, it's going to be rough for him. I don't know if he can win.
He's got Dryad Arbor, Basic Forest, and Veil of Summer.
Yeah, Veil of Summer doesn't do anything against Renin 6. Renin 6 is just going to get back those Ghost Quarters. Veil of Summer doesn't protect the Ink Moths against the Ghost Quarters. I think if Matt goes Ghost Quarter, Renin 6, Ghost Quarter, Josh will just concede. If he doesn't, Josh will still try to hope to get something. But it is... That Niv-Mizzet definitely got Matt, I think, the win on this game.
Just tons of card draw, lots of...
Yeah, like
just all answers.
He got, 4 cards off the first one. So for 1 Bring to Light, he got a Niv-Mizzet, which then got him 4 more cards. And then for another Niv-Mizzet, he got another 5 cards. And all of his cards are just good. He's not hitting, like, dead, irrelevant cards that don't do anything. No, he's just getting tons of answers.
And there's the Renin 6.
Renin 6 is just not fair.
With
Hogak gone, this card can finally shine in Modern. I think Renin 6 is sweet. It definitely warped Legacy. And then in situations like this, it's going to be so feel good where you're like 2 mana, blow up both your man lands.
Yeah, at first, when this card first got, spoiled and things like that, I was like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then as the more and more you look into it, the better and better it just looked, the better it's gotten. Like, this card is insane at 2 mana.
As soon as that card was printed, I looked at it and went, I've always wanted to play Lands in Legacy. I think it's about time I finally play Lands in Legacy. And now with Hogak on, I'm like, I just want to play Panza with Renin 6 and Ghost Quarters, and I just don't want you to ever play Magic. But I am a jerk like that sometimes.
All right, so it looks like...
Yeah, they're going to go to Game 3. Josh not having any way to keep his creatures alive, he can't do anything, especially with nothing on board. And that board state for Matt, sure, the Kaya's not doing much, the Domri's not doing much, but sooner or later that Kaya would have ulted to deal some damage to Josh in order to help Matt win the game. But it was really that Renin 6 plus Teferi in hand. Josh knew there was not things he could do.
And the other thing, too, is for Josh here, especially being able to be on the play, is super big because Infect in general, how are you realistically interacting with Birds of Paradise? You're not playing Lightning Bolt. You're not playing Gut Shot or any random, get rid of a 0/1 type card.
And also the nice part, with Josh being on the play now, he can probably feel safe playing a turn 1 creature just because, he also, right there, he just saw the majority of Matt's deck. He didn't see any 1-drop removal, and I don't think I would expect it in a Niv-Mizzet deck. I'm sure Josh has done the research. He plays a lot of Magic, looked into Decklists, probably sees maybe the only thing that's questionable that you can play is Lightning Bolt, but even then you just want all your cards to be multicolored, that way Niv-Mizzet is getting them for you. So being on the play, you feel really comfortable just going turn 1 creature, and now I can turn 2 have protection spell, pump spell, counter magic, whereas Matt's turn 1 is going to be an Astrolabe or Birds of Paradise.
Let's see, these guys
I don't think anyone switched any cards there, so they're going to stick with the same 60 cards they presented in Game 2. I'm curious if Josh decided to bring the Geist in. Obviously, we didn't see any there. We saw the typical plans. We obviously did see the Veil Summers. I think he even drew either all 3 or at least 2 of them.
And I think that's the thing, right? There's no reason for them to actually switch, because at some point, if you're depending on what you're switching in and out, you're taking away from your game plan in general. Infect is a very, for the most part, streamlined deck. You don't want to be taking away from what you're doing. You don't want to cut too many pump spells. With this deck, because you have the Teferi, maybe it's a little different.
I think with him, since he's playing the white-blue package, it's a little different. On the draw, I might be contemplating, do I play Geist? Because Matt is going to be able to get to a board wipe possibly faster than I get to the kill, which means I'm going to go a longer game. On the play, being with, I'm going to have a turn 1 creature to Matt's turn 1 Birds or Astrolabe, I'd be more inclined to not have the Geist and be more aggressive. I think that also just comes down to how you feel. What do I think my deck is going to do right now? You kind of have that gut feeling almost sometimes, where it's just right now, Josh is doing what he wants to do, which is turn 1 creature, turn 2 could have a pump spell and something, and Matt can't have a turn 2 Supreme Verdict here, so he's just going to deploy another creature. Whereas if this was Game 2 or Josh was on the draw and Matt had a 3rd land here, then you probably wouldn't want to deploy a 2nd one because of Supreme Verdict. Or if you do it, he's Supreme Verdict, you get to untap Geist, and that is just a real hard card for Matt to answer since it has hexproof.
I think the big thing here is Josh has double Glistener Elf. Josh is reading Pillar of the Piranhas.
Yep, which, like I said, that is a card that people haven't played much of just because it was only in the original Ravnica block. It's really only good in EDH.
It's definitely a card I've played in Cube.
It is definitely a card I have played in Cube 100%. But before Niv-Mizzet, I don't think I've ever sold or traded this card to anyone who did not play EDH for EDH until Niv-Mizzet. And which is why I said, so many people want to play this deck, but it is so hard to find this land. And this land, I don't want to say is crucial, but it is it's huge to have 4 of these, and it just being a City of Brass that doesn't hurt you. The only thing it can't cast is your Astrolabes and Birds of Paradise, I think. Everything else in your deck, it can produce mana for. So this card's real good for Matt. Ooh.
Scale up for Josh.
So, is Josh going to go for it? He's going to see if Matt has an answer. If Matt doesn't have an answer, Josh might have it right here and now.
Matt has a full grip, so...
Yeah, but if he has the Helix and if Josh has the 1 mana protection spell right now,
Oh, no.
I think he's double checking a ruling right now because I don't know what phase we're in. I'm assuming we're still in the main phase, so that means Might of Old Corrosa real good right here. Lightning Helix won't do the job. Matt will gain his 3 life, which means nothing. Is that just... Yeah, that is just lethal between the Scale Up and the Might of Old Corrosa.